Welcome to Beyond the Blockchain with Scott Tyndall, a discussion of blockchain technology, cryptocurrency, and why it matters to you.
Hey folks, welcome into Beyond the Blockchain. I'm your host, Scott Tyndall, here live with you every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. It's another wonderful day to talk about blockchain technology and the ways it can change the world, and today we're going to have a little bit of time to do that. We're going to have a really neat opportunity to talk to a company called Baxus, and we're going to be able to talk to Carrie, the CTO of Baxus, and she's really going to be able to explain to us what they're doing inside the world of Web3 blockchain technology using the Helium ecosystem to now start to quantify and measure and help you tokenize your collections of whiskey and wine, which I know a lot of our listeners will find pretty interesting. So Carrie will be our guest here in a little bit, but as always, we like to start with the headlines, and I'd be remiss if we didn't keep belaboring the point on the FTX debacle, which continues to get more complicated and more dynamic as we go, and the rabbit hole just keeps getting deeper. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know where it's going. I know it's weird. I know it's unseemly. I know it seems like too many connections to be coincidental, but I don't really know any more answers than that. What I do know is that a lot of people have lost a lot of money. A lot of people had their money on FTX, and now they're worried that through this bankruptcy, they may never get their money back. Now, there's two weird things going on here. We've got we've talked before about Sam Bankman-Fried being the CEO of FTX, and is he a wunderkind or is he something else? And we're caught in two dynamics right now. On one hand, we have him tweeting himself that next week he will be speaking at a New York Times event along with Janet Yellen and President Zelensky of the Ukraine and Mark Zuckerberg and some of these luminaries of the world. While meanwhile, we have U.S. senators demanding that they be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. So here's this weird dynamic. We've got the New York Times. They're going to prop him up next week and have him on a panel with Zelensky, Yellen, Zuckerberg, some of these other people. And then on the other side of the equation, we have this article from CoinDesk. It says, U.S. senators demand Sam Bankman-Fried, FTX execs be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Now, that would seem like it wouldn't match up, and it gets weirder the deeper you go. So it says, in a letter Wednesday, Senator Elizabeth Warren and Sheldon Whitehouse, a Democrat from Rhode Island, reminded Attorney General Merrick Garland of the DOJ's recently renewed commitment to pursuing white-collar criminals. The senators want them to honor that commitment when investigating the behavior of former FTX CEO, SBF, and other executives with the utmost scrutiny. So there's going to come a reckoning here. The New York Times and the Democratic senators now are a little bit at odds here, and the senators want them to honor that commitment when investigating these folks. Now, Senator Warren has long been a critic of the crypto industry, and they've been monitoring the collapse of Bahamas-based FTX, which it's kind of funny to call it Bahamas-based FTX when many of the tangible connections are U.S.-based. But on Tuesday, we had additional information. Not only Senator Warren, but Senator Dick Durbin and Senator Tina Smith sent a letter to Fidelity asking the financial services firm to reconsider allowing retail clients to include Bitcoin in their retirement plans. Last week, Warren and Durbin wrote to SBF and FTX, the CEO, asking for information about what precipitated the exchange's collapse. So we've got this giant collision of information, right? On one hand, you've got the New York Times inviting SBF and his clearly fraudulent behavior to sit on a panel with President Zelensky, who, by the way, received a substantial amount of money through crypto, which was then held with FTX. By the way, we've talked about SBF being the second largest donor to the Biden campaign. It's just getting weird, and I don't know the answers. And I don't think I'm smart enough to come up with the answers, but I do think it's something that we all need to pay attention to. What I do know is, regardless of all the fraud or the manipulation, one thing that Web3 and blockchain is built for is proof of work. And when we come back, we're going to talk to someone who's doing just that. It's about proof of presence. It's about proof of work. It's about using Web3 technology, not for financial gain, but actually serve a purpose in the real world. So when we come back, we're going to talk to Caroline from Baxus. She's going to tell us how whiskey and wine are now using Web3 technology for proof of presence. And I think it's going to be pretty interesting when we come back on Beyond the Blockchain.
Welcome back to Beyond the Blockchain with Scott Tyndall.
Hey folks, welcome back to Beyond the Blockchain. I'm your host, Scott Tyndall, live with you every Wednesday night here at 7 o'clock on 106.5 FM Talk. You know, we've talked a little bit about today about proof of presence and proof of physical work. Some things that, you know, we like to talk on the show about real live things that are going to actually change your life, right? And I think we can do that tonight as well. So tonight on the show, we've got Carrie from Baxus. Carrie, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hey, we're really excited about having you on the show. One of the things that we love to talk about are people in this, you know, this tipping ecosystem that I guess this new word of tipping, you know, this token incentivized private infrastructure network that people don't really know what it means yet. But I would love, here's what I do know. Our listeners love whiskey and they love wine. So this is right up their alley. Why don't you give us a little short kind of understanding of what Baxus is all about, and then we can dive into more about the future of the company.
Oh, God, absolutely. So basically what we're doing is creating infrastructure for tangible assets, and we're starting with whiskey and wine. And so what does that actually mean is that we're creating through blockchain, through data, through Helium and different decentralized networks, a protocol and system that allows for us to ensure, authenticate, and store whiskey and wine bottles. And then you, as the end user, are able to view your portfolio, view the most updated prices of these items, and then also trade them back and forth, where the underlying item actually just stays in the vault. And so through this, you're kind of able to, as a collector, have your collection in a very safe, secure facility where there are all of these sensors making sure that you can do a real-time audit that allows you to see real-time temperature data and humidity data, as well as proof of presence, which is just basically proving that the asset is where we say it is. And so we're starting with whiskey and wine, but really this is we can expand into any asset class, and then we can also do collateralized loans, any sort of monetization that you can think of. So a lot of room to grow, but I myself am a wine lover, and so this was just kind of an awesome excuse to get into this space more.
No, that makes a ton of sense to us. And we've talked a lot about the Helium network before on the show. Give us an idea a little bit about your partnership there and how that works, that you actually do what you do through the use of that network.
Oh, totally. Helium is incredible. And I think it is one of the most underhyped things in blockchain, to be honest. The concept of decentralized wireless is just absolutely game-changing. So for us specifically, what we're trying to do is create a protocol that allows you to have a real-time audit of the underlying asset in the vault. And the Helium network is a perfect thing for that because we can use the LoRaWAN network, which is the sort of lowest network, meaning that you can send small bits of data over really long ranges. And that's perfect for us because what we're sending is temperature data, which is literally one integer, humidity data, which is one integer, and then sort of a probe that makes sure that the underlying asset exists. And so we have sensors on the LoRaWAN network in the vaults, And then we are also working with Hotspotty, who I know you had on the show, to create and help support the Helium LoRaWAN network, and specifically in Kentucky. And then that will allow for all of the casks on our platform to also have all of this data. So everything we have in our vaults are outfitted with these LoRaWAN sensors. And then because of Helium, because we're able as the end user to be able to provide coverage in these areas that don't actually have a Wi-Fi connection, which is incredible, specifically in kind of rural Kentucky where all of these casks are.
Right.
You can create that from nothing, and then that allows us to get data about these actual underlying casks on the network. So it's on 2 levels.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating. And you're right. We've talked to Daniel and Max before from Hotspotty, and I love those guys. I had a chance to meet them out in Austin and get to know them, and they have remarkable brains. And I am just always impressed by what they're coming up with and what they're working on. I think what you're talking about is going to make a lot of sense to most of our listeners. And even if they're not collecting, say, bourbon or wine, they may be collecting something else. I mean, just previously on the show, we talked about like sports cards, right? Like to be able to tokenize a sports card collection would make a huge benefit for someone, or to be able to collateralize that, right? There are a lot of people that may have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of collectibles, and being able to have a proof of presence with also being able to monitor the conditions of the vault where they're kept in makes a huge it makes a huge impact on being able to validate that collection.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I completely agree. And it's very exciting to talk about it, because I think turning these assets into almost like an asset class where our vaulting infrastructure allows people to be able to get an understanding of how these assets are being stored. You don't have to just ship it off to a storage facility and hope for the best, right?
Yeah.
And because of that, everybody on the network is able to understand how the assets are being stored and what external factors are affecting them, and whether they're actually there and what temperature they're being stored at. And so that means that everybody on the network can feel safe about that fact, so that you can collateralize these assets, for a loan, and you can provide financialization products on top of that. And so it's funny because people are like, oh, can't you do this without blockchain? And the answer is absolutely no.
Right.
Right? You need the blockchain, you need the Helium network in this case, because that allows everybody in the system to be able to see how the assets are being stored and whether they're retaining the value. And that is so vital to what we're doing.
I think it's really cool. I'm not a very good collector of whiskey and wine because I enjoy it, so I don't collect it as well. But it does make sense to me in the idea, and we talked about this before about sports cards, and then maybe even creating a DAO, and now we're going a whole another level down, but creating a DAO around gaining these assets. All right, let's go. Remember last year when Constitution DAO tried to buy a copy of the Constitution? No, it was the Declaration of Independence. 100%. Remember that? That would be the perfect example. Okay, let's say you get your hands on this piece of historic artifact. You need to store it somewhere where you can feel secure that it's climate controlled, humidity controlled, and that it actually resides in the place that you say it resides. Right? Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. I can see this giant scalability of people with niche interest that say, oh, we want to ensure that all the whatevers of this all reside in a safe space that are safely secured and monitored. And we'll all equally contribute together to ensure that happens. Am I on the right track there?
Oh, completely. Absolutely, completely. And the really cool thing about the LoRaWAN network is that it's built up from an industry-specific use case. People aren't really that familiar with it because it's not that sexy. There's nothing about it that inherently is ooh, exciting. But there are so many sensors and a lot of IoT use cases or, shipping companies, asset tracking companies are involved in this space. And there are a lot of sensors that are able to determine sort of different factors about the underlying assets. So, for example, there's like soil moisture sensors, or water leak sensors. Like anything that you can kind of get a sense of, we can just attach a LoRaWAN kind of beacon to that will allow it to propagate through the network. So instead of just temperature and humidity, you can really take action of any kind of type of metric, which just makes this applicable to any asset class, as you were saying. And it does it in like a trustless way, which is kind of the best thing about it. So we're starting with whiskey and wine because that is where my co-founder has just an exceptional understanding. And it's just an asset class and a bunch of assets that are just begging for this marketplace to exist. But, grand scale, this can be applicable to anything.
I love the way that you're describing the LoRaWAN network along with Helium, because we've talked about it before, but what I always like to do is give our listeners like a practical, applicable way to understand this, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what you're describing, because what you're starting to describe are non-traditional asset classes that people could then invest in, right? Mm-hmm. You take like fine art or something of that magnitude, where you said like, okay, I want to fractionally invest in a Picasso, but how do I know I've got the right thing, that it's got the provenance that it says it is, and it's kept in a safe, secure environment? And that's essentially what you're doing, right?
Oh, completely. And that's what is most exciting to me about where Baxus is going, because through the trustless vaulting infrastructure, we're basically able to become the wholesaler to any of these fractionalized asset platforms. So, for example, Masterworks has done an absolutely brilliant job of purchasing these incredible artworks and then fractionalizing them and allowing people to invest in, 1/10 of a Picasso. Oh, sorry, not 1/10. That'd be way too much money. 1,000th
maybe. Yeah, who knows?
Millionth of a Picasso. Yeah. And then resell it on a secondary platform. But, the user who invests in that fraction of that underlying artwork, they don't actually know where it is. They don't know the external factors that are apprised to it. They're just trusting that Masterworks is holding it correctly. And, obviously Masterworks is holding it correctly, but you don't actually know, right?
Not only do you not know,
what we're doing is providing that insight to people.
I think that's a wonderful point. Not only do you know, but I happen to have some really weird, unique experience with Ripley's, and the Ripley's, believe it or not, mm-hmm. and all that. They keep all of their assets in a giant warehouse in Orlando that's just in a nondescript building that looks like any other strip mall you could ever imagine. Everything from Marilyn Monroe's dress that Kim Kardashian wore a few months ago to Abraham Lincoln's hair and dinosaur bones, all these things. And they're literally just sitting in a strip mall in Orlando. And it's the most amazing thing. You can go in there and like put on Muhammad Ali's, warm up jacket from from a fight. It's just interesting. But you go, my word. One of the things we got to do is introduce you to the folks from Ripley's, because they need what you're offering immediately, because they need to put that stuff under some observation.
I mean, that would be great. But it's true, right? Like, and the thing that's so brilliant about the Helium network, and that I just absolutely fell in love with, was the fact that you as a user are able to control the coverage of the area by purchasing a miner and becoming a part of the network. So you buy this small hardware device, you plug it into your wall at home, you hook it up, and then you're making money from being a part of this network. And then you're able to set up these sensors that ping information to these miners that allow you to get an understanding of their assets. It's just absolutely brilliant. You don't have to pay Verizon to send wiring to a specific area for Wi-Fi coverage, right? You decide where it is. And so that's just absolutely brilliant. And then for anything that's high in value as an end user that you're investing in, you want to make sure that your initial investment is, only appreciating in value, right? You want to make sure that it's still okay. And so that's just what we're trying to do.
I think it's a really unique and interesting concept. We're going to go to break in a minute, but when we come back, I want to talk more about this. I want to talk more about how you kind of came up with the idea, how you decided to partner with the Helium network. We're obviously a big supporter of of the Helium network and Hotspotty and Hive Mapper and
definitely.
GeoNet and everybody that's working through this ecosystem. I think it's incredibly fascinating. One of the things I love to do on this show is we never talk about token price. We only talk about the future and people who are building the future. And that's what
Oh,
makes
that's the best part
that's
of
what
it.
makes me excited, you know? And so hopefully, after the break, we can talk more about that. And you can tell us kind of like how you got involved in that, why that decided to make sense for what you're doing. And then we could continue on. How's that sound?
Sounds amazing.
All right. All right, folks, we're going to go to a break real quick and pay some bills. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Carrie more about how assets are now being tracked on Web3 and the blockchain and why that matters to you. Coming up on Beyond the Blockchain.
Welcome back to Beyond the Blockchain with Scott Tyndall.
Hey folks, welcome back to Beyond the Blockchain. I'm your host, Scott Tyndall. I'm here with you every Wednesday night like we are. If you missed the show live, you can always catch up with us on the podcast or on YouTube at a later date. So if you missed the first half of the show, you're definitely going to want to catch up, hear what Carrie has to say. But for now, let's dive into the second half of the show. Carrie, I had a wonderful time visiting with you on the first half of the show, but let's talk about now how you kind of got started on this adventure and how the blockchain became the linchpin of the, core philosophy of your business.
Oh, I mean, definitely. So, where do we begin? Okay. So I got into blockchain in 2018 at the height of the ICO crisis. And when I was in college, I was just like fascinated by distributed computing in general. Like the concept that blockchain was theorized in the 1980s and then is made possible now because of technological advancements and exists and is able to like provide ownership is just such a fantastic evolution of humanity. Like Web 1 was reading, Web 2 reading and writing, Web 3 reading, writing, owning. Like that's just brilliant. And I was a head TA of this database class at Columbia, and then my co-founder happened to be in a recitation. He was my co-founder at that time, but he was brilliant, and he was like, "Hey, I've been trading whiskey for 6 years. I'm trying to create a global marketplace for this. There's a lot of area in this space to grow, and it's an incredible asset, and it's such a thriving community. I think there's a lot of ability to provide utility to this space." And I was like, "Hey, I've been obsessed with blockchain for a really long time. I think there's something we can do here." And so we started off by just with this dream of just creating this marketplace for people to be able to buy and sell whiskey on a global scale, where the underlying asset is vaulted so that you can redeem it if you want to drink it. But hey, if you want to hold on to it for a couple of years and give it to your kids, you can do that as well. And then that marketplace component started the thought of actually, okay, we need to build a vault. And hey, as a user, why am I going to trust these guys who are saying that I'm vaulting this thing in New Jersey? Why would I be okay with that? And then came in the component of a real-time audit. And the fact that for stablecoins, you have proof of reserve through these Oracle networks, and nobody's doing that for NFTs. And we need to do that for asset-backed NFTs. We need to create, the platonic ideal of an asset-backed NFT. And so that's really where the dream came in. And then I'm based in New York, and I met Joey, who is the technical director of Helium Foundation. He's absolutely brilliant, about 3 months ago at Empire DAO in New York. And he was like, "Hey, I think this is the LoRaWAN network." He pulled up this Google sheet of historical temperature sensors of this tree in Vancouver, Canada. And I was like, "Oh my God, this is exactly what we need." And then since that time, it's just been learning more about it and just really getting into it.
Yeah, we've had Joey on the show before, so our listeners will be familiar with that. No one is going to be surprised that Joey convinced you that this was a good idea. He's a very charismatic
he's
guy.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, he is. I had
so brilliant.
I had a
He's
chance
amazing.
to visit with him in Austin as well when I was out there for Helium House, and such a really unique, interesting world of humans who I really had a chance to get to enjoy to meet. tell this is I'd laugh because it's kind of like life coming for full circle of everything that people dream of is now being implemented in real life, right? So
Yeah.
tell us about like you've got the vault there in New Jersey, okay? How much inventory do you want to stock there? Are you looking at new vaults? Is that something that's going to come online
Oh
soon?
man. Well, I mean, honestly, like the growth that we've had has just been insane. So we started off with a vault in New Jersey, and when you think storage for whiskey, I know it seems crazy, but think cubic feet. Don't think square feet.
Okay.
So we're able to store like 10,000 bottles in this vault. That is like a 20 by 10 space, super small.
Mm-hmm.
And we then got a partner with an Armagnac chateau in France we're setting up a satellite vault there. And then we have casks on the platform. So we're working with a lot of like distilleries to be able to set up this infrastructure in these rural areas of Kentucky. So
maybe that
we have
becomes an
around,
option
like,
for the distillers, right?
3,000
So,
sorry.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was just thinking maybe that becomes an option for the distillers. I think about how many people wish they could get their hands on a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle, but they can't seem to do so. But maybe they could fractionalize and tokenize and own parts of this inventory. Isn't that kind of the idea?
Yeah, so we're staying where the NFT represents one-to-one proof of ownership authentication and the whole asset, the whole underlying asset. Because when you get into fractionalization, that's when the SEC views this as a security besides a commodity. And so that's when you kind of get to the place where it's like, okay, does this actually represent the asset or does this go into something more? And so there are different like mechanisms that allow you to own parts of an asset, but actually like fractionalizing the NFT for us, we can do it, but we have like the appropriate filings, but we're just not really in that space because we're just trying to track and make sure that people are able to own their bottles one-to-one.
Right. So
But
basically, if I wanted to, let's say I had my own collection, kind of the idea would be that I could ship that collection to you. You would store it in this modified humidor is the wrong answer, but it's the concept, right? The cask, I guess, is probably the vault is the better answer. But if someone had a collection and they wanted to become a part of your network, what would they need to do?
So basically, they would just reach out to us. We would get an understanding of how big their collection is. If it's incredibly large and they have their own facility or their storage facility is open for us to install the tech that would allow for the proof of presence and humidity sensors, we can go that route. Or they would ship all their items to us. We would take 360 scans, use our authenticator network to authenticate all the items. We insure everything that is in our vault. And then you as a user can log into your portfolio on Baxus.co and see all of your assets, all of your bottles, all of your casks. And then I'm very proud to say that we actually have the world's largest data set for historical whiskey sales, which is something that I've been working on and scraping from from sites for the past 2 years. And so you can actually see an up-to-date real-time pricing of your portfolio.
Wow. So that's basically like the eBay sold listings, for a better lack of understanding, or in sports cards we call it Beckett, right? It's like so basically it's the oracle, right? If the Web3 term, I guess, would be the oracle of what the value of this collection might be.
Exactly. So that's what's so exciting about what we're building is that we're literally, and I stole this line from Daniel at Hotspotty, but we're literally hardware to web because we have data, we have hardware, we have blockchain, and we have like a web services stack as well. So we're kind of doing it all. But the data is so vital to what we're building because you as a user are able to, value your underlying collection. And the only way that, you could take a collateralized loan or trade it or just have like an understanding of, how much value is here is if you have all the historical data and you have up-to-date pricing for everything and you're able to see in a transparent way what's going on in the market around you.
And it seems to me with what you're doing, you actually become the educator to the financiers and the banks or whomever would make the loan off that, right? Because typical bankers, they don't understand what we're talking about. In fact, they're probably playing golf right now instead of, listening to the show. So do you find you spend a lot of time trying to educate bankers and finance on what you're doing?
That is honestly such an astute point. That is so true. I think the issue right now is that, blockchain in general people attribute the technology of blockchain to the price of cryptocurrencies. And it's just not the same thing. Like when you look at underlying like consensus algorithms of blockchains, those don't change dependent upon how many people are purchasing the token that is made for the blockchain to incentivize people to keep it alive. Like it's two different things. And so when you talk to financiers or you talk to bankers, you have to not only educate them on the fact that, these collectible markets are booming. Like StockX creating this market for sneakers has allowed it to grow like 10x in the past 6 years. So that's step number one, is being like, hey, people really want to invest in collectibles and buy collectibles as an investment vehicle, not just as, something that they can wear around or drink. So that's step number one. And then step number two is being like, hey, also, the blockchain is the only way we can do this, because it's the only way we can guarantee authentication and provenance for everybody to view at the same time. And so those are sort of the two steps that we have to do: education, and you have to spoon feed it, specifically to people kind of coming onto the platform. We're allowing people to really like experience this in a very, for lack of a better word, a very like Web 2 way, where you can use your credit card. You don't really have to like connect an external wallet into the site. Like the fact that right now to interact with any dApp on the blockchain, you need to have a Chrome extension that you save the secret key and then connect it that way. Like that's just such terrible user experience.
Yeah, you're 100%. You're 100% right. We've talked a lot about the way we'll know that blockchain and Web3 is mainstream is when you don't even know you're interacting with Web3. It just has to feel like
honestly,
real life.
Sorry to cut you off. The perfect example is like, okay, when you're on the internet, does anybody understand what TCP/IP protocol does?
Absolutely not. All right, when we come back, all right, Carrie, we're going to come back from the break and we'll do another segment.
Crazy.
Let's finish up. Does that sound good? When we come back on Beyond the Blockchain.
Welcome back to Beyond the Blockchain with Scott Tyndall.
Hey folks, welcome back to Beyond the Blockchain. I'm your host, Scott Tyndall, here with Philip running the board for me tonight, keeping everything good to go.
Right on.
We've got Carrie here joining us tonight, telling us all about how to take your whiskey and wine collection and maybe other valuables, put them on the blockchain, ensure that they are safe, secure, and are the way you think they are, and why the blockchain is the answer to help us through this process. Carrie, thanks for being here. I've had so much fun so far.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much.
I know you probably didn't expect that Mobile, Alabama would be the home to maybe the only live radio show in America about blockchain technology, but we're glad you could join us today, all the way from, New York.
Well, I'm Canadian, so I am always happy to talk about it no matter what.
Yeah, excellent. So, all right, so we've kind of had a deep dive so far on the business and how it works and what you do. Tell us a little bit about how the business makes money, because I think people they know you're not a nonprofit, and then let's dive into kind of what you think the next stage of the business should be.
Oh yeah, definitely. So we make money in two ways. So firstly, on the marketplace, we take a transaction fee. So if you are an individual who stores your bottles of whiskey with us, you get a piece of perpetual royalties every time that bottle sells on the marketplace. And then we also take a seller's fee on all the bottles. Baxus and my co-founder have been doing a lot of different modeling on that and found out that seller's fees make a lot more sense than buyer's fees. And so we take 10% of any sale that happens on the chain and happens on the marketplace. And then also we're just working with a lot of different, distilleries and brands and individuals looking to kind of take this trustless vault tech and put it in their rick houses and in their vaults. And so we're able to sort of sell that as a service as well.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me, especially working directly with distributors or large collectors. How large of a collection does someone need maybe to be a potential, partner for you in this regard, or a potential client?
Oh my gosh! Like honestly, like one bottle to like a $3 million collection, like any size. I mean, we are starting off with people who love whiskey and are looking for a way to store it, and are just looking for a way to have this as like a safe asset that they can have in a storage facility, and they can just see historical pricing about it. And if they want to sell a bottle to somebody and then have a nicer Christmas present for the family, like they can do that as well. But then if you're somebody who has been like working on your collection for years and it's a real point of pride, and you have your own like facility right now, then we can come to you, set it up, and just allow you that access as well. So really, it makes sense for anybody.
I think that's a great point.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say that's a great point. I know people here. So one of the things you should know about the state of Alabama is a lot of the alcohol distribution is controlled by the state. And I know people that stand in line to buy bottles of whiskey or buy bottles of bourbon on release days. But I also know folks that have substantial collections. So this is the reason I ask is it sounds like it's a good fit for both groups, both the ones that have maybe 1, 2, 5, 10 bottles that they want to send to you, but also maybe have a collection inside their home that need your expertise on how to secure proof of presence, humidity, and sensorize that whole experience, right?
Oh, yeah, no question. I mean, so many people who we work with, like they keep their own personal collection at home that they want to drink and enjoy with their friends and family. And then they have all of the bottles that, they want to keep for their kids. And that's what they send to us, And that's what's just so brilliant about whiskey in general is that it's like, it's a step in time, and you can't ever reproduce, that specific bottle at that point in time. And so that's just why it's such a brilliant, brilliant asset that we started off with. And so, so a lot of users, like a lot of people, a lot of folks have bottles that they keep at home and then bottles that they send to us.
That's a great point. I know we touched on it earlier, but let's remind them again, if this was something that they wanted to get involved in and they wanted to grow kind of their collection or just become involved in your organization, what is the best way to do so?
Oh, yeah. So you can, we're on like Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, all the social media sites, Baxus, BAXUS.co. And you can also go there and just put your name on the list for the portfolio, for the beta. So if you have any bottles that you want to send us, you can, add your email there and then just like click that you want to get connected, and then we can help you out with any of that.
This is a very bold question. Can I be your beta user for sports cards? I need to send you some sports cards that I want you to hold on to.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, we're working with photographers, like we're working with jewelers, like casks, like, what we're building is for anything that is a collectible and that some people love and they want to make sure it's safe. Like that's what we're trying to do.
Well, I think that's really important because it broadens out the conversation beyond whiskey and wine, which, I think are really the heavy hitters there. It's a wonderful place for you to start, and it's some low-hanging fruit. But I think you're right on the money at diversifying into more of the collectability market, including, everything that someone wants to secure and then possibly collateralize or tokenize. Just makes an immense amount of sense. And then I'd love to get you back on another time. And I think we should talk about DAOs and how to create DAOs for specific items, like specific, almost like preservation of historical items that could then be put under your purview and security. I think there's an immense amount of opportunity there.
Oh yeah, DAOs are just absolutely fascinating. And honestly, we haven't even scraped the surface of like their potential right now.
That is definitely a follow-up conversation we'll have to have. We'll keep it elementary today for our folks and our listeners. But I think it's something that we should knock around offline, because I think that you've got to, we have a term down here. You're like a rolling ball of butcher knives. It's a really good thing you got going on. It's going to be hard to stop the momentum once you get it going. So I'm just really impressed with what you're doing.
I haven't heard that saying before, but I'll take it. I like it.
Yeah, well, you won't forget it now. Rolling ball of butcher knives. You know exactly what that looks like.
Definitely not.
Well, this has been a lot of fun for me. I appreciate it. I'd love to have you back on. Maybe let's catch up in a couple months in the spring when you've developed the model a little more, and we've got a lot more to talk about. Does that sound fun?
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. I just, as you couldn't tell, I just love talking about this stuff. I could talk about this all day.
Well,
That's pretty much all I do.
We could tell. So your passion comes through and your enthusiasm, and that's a wonderful place to be. And that's the type of people that we love visiting with, because, like I said, on this show, we're not interested in trading, swapping, any of that kind of stuff, a coin price. We're interested in the people that are building the future, and that's really what we love to talk about, because that's what gets me inspired, and I think that's what our listeners, want to appreciate as well, is getting to know the people who are building the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate that.
This has been a lot of fun tonight, Carrie. I'm going to send you the links, and we'll put it up on the web. People can catch up with our whole conversation if they caught up somewhere along the way. But for everyone else, we're going to wrap it up here on Beyond the Blockchain, and next week, we'll do it again, live Wednesday night, like we do every week here on 106.5 FM Talk.